Hello everyone, today I'll bring you a video on how many troops can Gondolin rally before its fall. Although Tolkien never gave a definitive number, I will try to find out using the books as reference. The only numbers that we are directly given is the army that Turgan leads to the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, consisting of 10,000 warriors, a large army by Middle-earth standards. The text definitely implies that Turgan left behind many warriors to defend. The bulk of Gondolin's military was split into 12 houses at the time of its fall, and out of the 4 commanders at the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, that being Turgan, his nephew Maeglin, Glorfindel, and Ecfelion, all are leaders of one of these houses. Whilst not explicitly stated, we can make the educated guess that the 10,000 warriors were made out of these 4 respective houses, and if we take casualties suffered in the battle into account, then we get around 6,000 warriors, which leaves only 8 houses more. But not all of Gondolin's soldiers reside in the city, many of them being tasked with guarding the passage through the mountains. A few years before the fall of Gondolin, Tuor and his guide Voronwe journey to the Hidden Realm. As they reach the encircling mountains, they are captured by Elamakil, captain of the guard, who escorts them through the 7 gates. We only know the garrisons of the 5th and 6th gates, being 200 and 300 elves. We also know that the garrison of the third one is larger than the first 2, and that the last one is manned by an entire host. My estimate is that the first 2 gates have 200 elves, the fourth has 250, and the last 1000. This way we get around 2450 elves defending the gates, which is a reasonable number. Around the encircling mountains there are also many watchers, whose number is unknown. We can assume that they numbered around 2000 warriors. We'll add them to the count. As for the other houses, we'll take them one by one. The one we know most about is the House of the Wing, formed and led by Tuor. It is sometimes referred to as a folk or a bodyguard. Being the last house to be formed, it was certainly the least numerous. My minimum is 700 warriors and maximum 1500. They are described as lesser than Maeglin's house, but they are still able to fight in and survive the fall of Gondolin. I'll go out and say that Tuor had 1000 men under his command. Next we have the House of the Hammer of Wrath, led by Rag. They, along with other houses, were stationed to the northern gate. When the Balrogs and dragons began to throw fire over the walls, Rag led his people into the plain, where they slew several Balrogs. I must specify that this only happens in earlier versions, where the Balrogs were more numerous. Rag and all his men were killed, but not before each elf killed 7 foes. Seeing that this massacre halted the advance of the enemy, I guess Rag's men must have killed around 7,000 foes, but probably less. If they slew 7,000, then they must have been around 1,000, and seeing that this happens relatively late in the battle, Rog must have already had losses, possibly around other 1,000 men. That puts his house around 2,000 men. But Rag was not the only one tasked with defending the gate, the other one being Galdor and the House of the Tree. The fact that they were able to slow the advance of the orcs, suffer casualties, and survive the battle, and that Galdor was considered the second most valiant elf in Gondolin, shows that his battalion must be quite numerous, around 3,000 elves. Speaking of valiant elves, our next commander is Penlod, who had not 1 but 2 houses under his command, that of the Pillar and that of the Tower of Snow. After Rog's death, they bore the brunt of the assault. Although many, including Penlod, fell, some survived the battle. We can assume that they numbered around 4,000 men. Then there is the House of the Swallow, led by Duilin, primarily archers. Like other houses, it lost its lord and suffered casualties, but survived, so around 2,000 men. Only to be clear, when I'm referring to men, I'm not meaning mortal men, I'm just referring to them as warriors. Another house filled with archers were Egalmoth's men of the Heavenly Arch, tasked with manning the walls and siege engines. The fact that they were driven from the walls, were able to make their way to the main square, take part in the last stand of the Gondoliferium, and survive, suggests that they were around 1,500 elves. Last but not least is the House of the Harp. They were kept in reserve by Turgan, so they may not be very numerous, around 2,000. In total we have 25,900. I'll go out and say that there were 26,000 elves defending the city. Fun fact, or maybe not so fun, in earlier versions of the story we learned that only 830 elves survived the Fall of Gondolin, which is not even a tenth. Going in one night from 26,000 elves to not even 1,000 just shows how bloody the battle must have been. Before I end this video, I must specify that these numbers are only my speculations and are not definitive canon. I'm very curious what you guys think in the comments.